as the guy said, he's bought the Trek Slash back, and we're going to be doing a bit more intensive service. There are some specific things that he wants me to look at. So the thing that I told him about when I last had the bike was a bit of a cracking noise coming from this area, possibly loose bottom bracket, possibly something seized, possibly one of the lower bearings for the swing arm. Not really sure. Going to do some investigation work and we'll find out what it is. Other than that, things like his brake pads are worn out, so we're going to be changing those. So let's get going. So the tools we're going to need for this, just straightforward stuff. Allen keys to undo the crank bolts. We're going to need the tool to undo this one. We're going to need the bottom bracket tool as well. So nothing particularly complex to do this. So I've undone these two bolts here. What I have found is one of these, this one, is really badly rounded off, so my tool was starting to slip inside there. You can see it's just got some kind of rounded edges there, so whoever was looking at after this before wasn't using a particularly good tool. I've taken the preload cap off, and now all I've got to do is just raise that little clip up to release the pin, and I can pull this bad boy off. There's an awful lot of orange paint in the threads. So what I'm seeing there is some not especially clever threads. There's some steps in the thread and a lot of paint in the thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bike to one of my workshops, and I'm actually going to chase and maybe face it as well. Just to make sure all those threads are good, because there's no point me just greasing up this bottom bracket and shoving it back in. I think it'll be doing the same thing. So let's do that. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking care of the damaged thread inside here. It's mostly full of paint, but you can also see these kind of steps in the thread as well. So we're going to just try and take care of those. Just something to catch the oil and crud. Right, so left hand tap. Just make sure this in there. Same on the right hand tap. So those are together. And now what I'm going to do is pedal it the wrong way until they engage in the thread, and then wind them back so they start cutting the thread. And I'm going to wind them together if I can. Oh yeah, I've got some real resistance on that drive side. Oh, and I've got a load on the non-drive side now. I guess since as we're getting a clonking noise, it would be a good idea to check the face, so let's do that. What I've been showing you in videos so far is everything that you can do as a home mechanic with the likely tools that you've got at home. However, there are some jobs that just need to be done in a proper workshop setting, ideally by a qualified mechanic. Right, let's round those two apart and pull them out. That's quite a lot of material removed from there. That is more crud out of those threads than I was expecting, if I'm honest. So it's a good job we did this.
Full disclosure here, I am actually doing this in my lunch break whilst teaching a home mechanic course. The guys are just about to walk in and I figured, well, if they're here, it's not part of the course, but they might as well see it. It's a good teachable moment.
No, certainly not. You guys can have a look at what I'm doing if you want. What the problem I've had with this bike is there's a clunk noise coming from the bottom bracket. Don't know 100% that it's the bottom bracket, but I stripped the bottom bracket apart and there was a lot of paint and kind of stepped threads and things in there. The bottom bracket type it had was this kind of external cup, which is the type you guys have probably got on your bikes. And if these faces aren't absolutely perfectly parallel and these threads aren't absolutely perfect, what can happen is these effectively tilt like that. Or in this case, what I suspect has been happening is they've just been rocking back and forth.
Clicking.
Yeah, that's what I suspect has been happening. So what I'm doing is I've just run the threading tool in, pulled it back out again just to clear the threads of paint, because when I pulled the bottom bracket out there was loads of paint on it. And now I've reset it back in again, so it's clean and gone back in. Now what I'm going to do is pull one side out, and I've got a facing tool, which is this one here, which basically is going to go in, and it's just going to shave the surface. So all I'm going to do is just take the paint off. So we just need to make sure, if you come in, you can have a look if you want. So I've taken the paint off, so it's a nice smooth surface all the way around, and I've removed the minimum amount of material possible, because what I don't want to do is reduce the length of the bottom bracket shell, because they're quite fixed lengths. So now I'm going to just put this tool back together, back into the thread insert that I've got in there, and I'm going to take apart this side now. Put the threading tool onto this side, which I've just cleaned off, and you can see here all the cruddy paint, and obviously we don't really want that, so I'm going to remove the bare minimum. Okay, you can see where it was a little bit thicker in places than others, and that's it. So that surface is now nice and flat. So when we put the when I put the bottom bracket back, it should go in smoothly and not click. But this is quite a surprisingly common problem.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In an ideal world, I'd do this with a bare frame with no parts on it, so that I can move around the bike much more easily. But since I'm doing this job in isolation, I have to, well, I don't have to, but I am keeping all the parts on it. So I've cleaned the threads out of the bottom bracket, and the threads now look good. And I'm just going to clean the threads of this. I mean, the actual bearing is absolutely fine, but the thread is just full of crap from the frame. So I'm just going to clean that out. Just a little bit of anti-seize on the threads. Well, not a little bit, reasonable amount. same on the bottom bracket itself, and I'm going to thread this in.
The tool I'm using here is one that goes onto a ratchet of some kind, so it's a socket that basically fits straight over the bottom bracket cup itself. It's a far better tool to use than the hand one that I use at home. It's far less likely to leave any marks in the bottom bracket, so I really should get one of these for home, but I haven't got one yet, so I tend to just use it in the workshop. This particular one is the Park Tool BBT 19.2. Definitely well worth getting, around about £20–25.
So all the threads cut, faced and anti-seized. It's a 73mm shell, so it only needs one space on the drive side. Send that bad boy in. Get rid of any grease might have got onto any surfaces. I seem to remember that one of these bolts was quite rounded when I tried to take this off, so I think what I'm going to do, yeah, it was this one. I'm going to change that bolt out now before it causes problems. Get the preload bolt up until there's no play. Okay. And now to do the pinch bolts up. So these need to be done evenly. And remember to put the locating pin in before you tighten these bolts up. I prefer for this job, where I've got two opposing bolts like on a stem or a crank, I prefer to use a bar type torque wrench, but for that size I've got a clicker one here. Oh, the last person left it dialed up. Naughty, naughty. Just do one side then the other until you're happy both are tight. When it clicks. Okay, happy days. Something on those brakes is catching, so I'm going to have those back off again and just push the pistons back out again and have a reset. That's reset back to start position. Just reinsert the wheel, reset the caliper position, and hopefully have nothing catching. levers, so squeezy brakes, pump, pump, pump. That is a squeaky lever. I'm trying to take care of that in a minute. Alright, that's better. Now I can get a better position on this. Giving it a spin and a clamp like that with the brake pads clamping the disc gives a good start position for the disc, but it's not always. The position you'll end up in, but actually it's worked a treat this time. Just going to see if the disc is moving as I brake. Ever so slight amount, so I'll just tweak that to stop that. Boom. Disc not moving at all. Running free. No noise. Brake feels fine. Excelente. Let's just check the gears. They're still good. I did these a couple of weeks ago, so I'd expect them to feel good. Although the guy has washed the bike since, so the chain needs relubricating. Okay, let's go on a test ride. So the bad news is it has not taken care of the creak. So we've now got to look at everything else that might be creaking. It could be pedals, it could be the chain ring, it could be pivots on the suspension. So we've got to go through these things one by one, isolating them until we find what it might be. So my next protocol is checking that the bearings aren't clicking. So there's two ways I can do this. First one is to isolate the bearings from the bike. So I've removed them and I'm going to fit another set and then try the bike again. And then if it turns out that the creak stops, then I'm going to be looking into servicing these. Just put my diagnostic pedals on, so I know these ones don't creak. I've had them on many bikes. Just going to try it and see how it goes. Now, unfortunately, I didn't manage to film it because of other things that was going on at the time, but it turns out, as I first suspected, that that pivot was the place where all the noise was coming from. So that bolt's come out, all the bearings have been cleaned up, all the surfaces have been cleaned up, bolt's been returned back to the correct torque, and no creak whatsoever on this bike. So good job I had the cranks apart, because that was awful in there, but wasn't the noise. Now that pivot has been serviced, noise is gone. Excellent job. Alright, just got to change the brake pads. Just want to get my pad separator and just reset these pads all the way back in. I'm going to just loosen these calipers off just a smidge. So now the caliper can move from side to side. I'm going to release the pin off. Okay, that's ready to come out. And here I am merrily chuntering away to the camera without realising that my battery to my microphone had run out. What I was trying to talk about was when to wear gloves, and that I knew of a nice trick that some docs had told me about, which was wrapping gloves one over the other. So as you get through dirty jobs, you just take one off and then you reveal the next clean glove underneath. I personally choose to only wear gloves where I absolutely have to, but each to their own.
Having said that, it's worth knowing that wearing them does stop the transfer of oils from one thing to another, and I do find it's absolutely essential to wear them when putting pads back on, and that stops you getting any kind of crud onto those pads. Even the oils on your hands can contaminate these pads, and obviously the PPE aspect is to stop the oils and greases from doing things like cracking your hands and nasty things to your skin. These are the kind of jobs that I absolutely hate with gloves, because your gloves really get in the way of the feel of you trying to get things into place. Like this split pin, for example, I'm just not able to feel what's going on, but you've got to wear them. And these Black Mamba gloves are by far the best that I've found on the market. So pads are all reset, on goes the wheel. It's a bit of a tricky job trying to get them up through the pads, so just make sure you don't end up getting it between the pad and the piston. And now time to fit the axle and get it all torqued up to spec. Click. This bike had been a bit of a pain to set the disc, because there was a very slight bend on the disc which did stop me getting them perfect, and it was a real nightmare to take out, so I was only semi-successful getting rid of the bend in the disc. So it took me quite a long time and a lot of fettling and fiddling to get them set absolutely as I wanted them. But that was it, the bike was all done, no abnormal noises, no clicks, no clunks coming from the bike, and it rode absolutely sweet. If you want to come on one of my home mechanic courses, just look up spokespeople on the SciTech website. Otherwise, like and subscribe to check out more of this kind of content.